King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. After watching All Out this past weekend and saying to myself, where I really did enjoy the pay-per-view for the most part, I really did think it was an A+ show. I thought that, you could put a couple things down about how the show is done. When I listened to other podcasters that reviewed All Out this weekend and their thoughts about it, when you're looking at how, across the board, sure, you could nitpick on some of the matches and what were done in some of the matches when it comes to the referees and how they're utilized. And some botches and moves, say, like in the Women's Battle Royal. Or if CM Punk might have looked a little bit, ring rusted in the ring with Darby Allin. Or the way they booked the ending of the Jericho cage match before we had the debuts of Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson. Sure, there's a lot of things can be nitpicked, but then there are those in the IWC that go so far. And I really believe it is a true feeling of, first of all, since the start of the company, when CM Punk, when Cody Rhodes, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they all get to Tony Khan, get into his ear. Here he comes. Tony Khan puts the money down. All Elite Wrestling's born. And the thought process of these EVPs and the polarization that these executive vice presidents had with this company and what has been done with it so far. And then the whole thought where Cody Rhodes made comments, we're not going to bloat the roster with former WWE talent. But the debuts they had were all former WWE talent. This is the kind of stuff that people want to go ahead and talk about. People want a fantasy book, because when they also see Adam Cole or Bryan Danielson or whoever else that comes in, are they going to be happy with who gets put in particular matches? So if we're going to get Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega, that might be going after each other. That was kind of set up. CM Punk now dealing with Team Taz. That's a setup. MJF now dealing with Brian Pillman. That's a setup. Brian Pillman Jr. Let me be clear of that. Or if you're looking at whatever. Ruby Soho now trying to go after Britt Baker. So there's things where some of the fans out there, the IWC, they're going to expect that some of these stars, because of their cred in WWE, they're going to feel like, well, they need to be put to the top of the card, and that this will also kind of just downplay some of the stars that AEW has been building for the last 2 years, whether it's a Darby Allin or an Orange Cassidy or a Jungle Boy. Things like that. I'm not surprised by any of this. There is a lot of vitriol and hatred that wrestling fans will have about an opposing product, anything that goes up against WWE for whatever reason. When the company's not doing well, and then you see this here. This happened with WCW. This happened with TNA. This happened with ECW, and now here are with AEW. It is a repeating course. Why fans will get so upset so quickly is there's no such thing as some camaraderie. Here's the thing. Any company that is in opposition, whether they're in opposition, they're working in the same lane, competition, whatever, no matter what, there are going to be some people that are detractors, and they're going to be critical. And they're going to find every little thing to nitpick and be critical of. Now, for me, I have said from the beginning, I am a fence sitter. I have enjoyed, if you notice, quite a bit of what I do is, I'm very critical of WWE in general. We know that. With AEW, I haven't been as critical at all. There's a lot of things why I like what I like about the show. I'm not a big fanboy. I've not spent a whole lot of money on them. I spent on their pay-per-views, and that's about it. But I'm not going after merchandise, and I'm not praising all to the masses every day about AEW. There's just certain things that I enjoy. It's a good wrestling show because the fans are really into it. It's got a lot of stars that I do enjoy. I think Bully Ray actually put a good way of putting it after he recapped All Out and busted open. because of the way that WWE is doing their thing and how AEW does their own. But there are a lot of pro wrestling fans that are starting to go ahead and look at AEW now, starting to pay attention to them. A spotlight's getting on them. And some people are starting to go ahead and take notice. When they see the amount of stars that have moved over, that will trigger. Here's the problem. It's like almost like a political party kind of thing, where, if you support one company, then you're going to get crapped on for doing that. It's as if you just cannot be allegiant to one or the other. Like, there's only one place you're going to be allegiant to, and that's WWE, because that's the bigger, larger company that's been around forever, that has given us WrestleManias and everything else that we should be grateful for, because Vince McMahon can do no wrong. But we all know that those same people that are allegiant, they are loyalists, they are apologists to WWE, they are the same ones that will criticize the roster, the creative, the direction of stars, and then they get pissed. And they cry in their playpens in some cases. I'm not talking about everybody, but there's a lot of people that will get upset and they piss and moan because of the fact that one of their stars went over. Shortly after NXT TakeOver, Adam Cole, now in AEW. Ruby Riott, after all the releases back in March and April, over in AEW. Bryan Danielson, after all, we're so used to calling him Daniel Bryan. Well, no, we're going to switch the name back. Bryan Danielson, after WrestleMania, in the match he had, main event of WrestleMania, and he's in AEW. Yeah. CM Punk, we haven't seen him in 7 years, was at the top of his game. After sitting in the Royal Rumble, when he had a run in there, after his run as champion, 363 days? Done. I mean, it's not for me to go ahead and I'm not here to go back in time and talk about why and how WWE has done what they've done with these stars and why they're here. Because it really doesn't have anything to do with that. I don't think so. What it comes down to is that the company, WWE, does not want to go ahead and rely on the fans and take their fantasy booking. Okay, because that is what the fans want. And they have gotten to do their fantasy booking with this company with really either NXT or WWE. They're not really doing it the way they want. They're kind of taking the feedback and taking certain stars that are going to get some kind of response from this. The group of stars that they've brought in. Because remember, some of the stars you saw from NXT or other places, they came from the indies. They came from other places. And then they got, a crowd to get behind them. And because the level of exposure that you get in WWE, sure, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, that makes some stars get a bigger spotlight, even though they're not being booked well. You're going to get that no matter what. And now here we are, and you see stars coming in by the woodwork. I would not want this company, AEW, to turn into something where it's just the haven, the sanctuary for lost or underused or simply just, former WWE superstars with chips on their shoulder. Which is why it's most important to me for AEW going forward, they have to be able to balance. To my opinion, when you see Bryan Danielson or Adam Cole or CM Punk, you have to think that those stars, because they've been around for so long, and they're dealing with a lot of stars that are in their 20s that are early in their careers. There's a time where certain stars, they will get their chance to be in that main event and will elevate. Now, some stars they haven't done that with. Christian Cage, he was given a title shot. I don't see him going back to that title shot. And then for Christian Cage right now, he's champion in Impact Wrestling, not AEW, though he went after the belt and did not win. And they can do a lot of things with that as well. But what it comes down to, it looks like Christian Cage is not part of that picture. Bryan Danielson is next for Kenny Omega. That's where the feud is going. That's the program next. And then you have Paul White, had his in with QT Marshall, whatever. Match was not going to be remembered after this night of All Out. Nobody's going to think about it. But everything that comes down to, there was a lot of comments about turning point, closing the gap. And the morale in WWE and some of the issues were being said by some real veterans that have been around for a long time that have made their comments. Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff. That's all coming out to the woodwork. And we're hearing a lot of stars making their points about what they're seeing right now in AEW. They're taking notice. You can't deny it. It's there. If you don't like it, that's another thing. But it is something where we have a lot of fans. Not so much the veterans, not so much the journalists, because I kept trying to look for any kind of hatred being said by the journalists out there. But I saw a lot of people reviewing a lot of the rags, the dirt sheets, that praised or gave good reviews of the show. Being this one of the biggest shows that AEW ever had. And Tony Khan even making a point, probably one of the most purchased pay-per-views since WWE did linear pay-per-views, about what, a decade ago? Pre-WWE Network? So that's what happens. The ratings have not resonated yet, and that could take some time because even the Rampage took a hit back on the ratings. They got under 700,000 for Friday night. And so you have that all there to look at. And I understand why some fans, because of the time spent, because of their fandom, the being stands, that word, the way you hear about musicians having stands, the WWE stands, whether they like to say it or not, they get upset. They don't like that somebody else is coming in and maybe doing things and getting the attention. When all the time you've invested into watching the product, you should be getting the attention. You should be rewarded with great content for the time you spent watching 5 hours of Raw and SmackDown and the pay-per-views and spending money on those pay-per-views and the merchandise. You feel like you deserve something for it. Okay. But then you see AEW, and instantly AEW in a couple of years, they've made some waves. They've been able to build an audience from nothing to getting 1 million viewers, 1.5 million viewers almost the first time out. And then seeing that WWE now did use NXT as a stopgap to stunt the growth of this company. And AEW was able to win that battle. They're not going to win the war. Okay, there's not going to be a war anyway. I think everybody needs to go ahead and look at the fact that AEW and WWE are doing two absolutely different things. And I don't believe now, the way Nick Khan is thinking with everybody else right now in WWE, they're not looking to do something where they're going to go back and they're going to look at AEW's competition down the line and they're going to respond back and they're going to change their product to counter program. I don't think that's happening again. They're not going to do what they had to do with WCW. They don't have to. They never have to. When WCW was competition, those were $2 million, multi-million-dollar companies. Private. Well, no, one was traded more or less, but WCW was, again, kind of its own part. But WWE was private. It could fail, and it could go down. This company's publicly traded now, WWE. And they have so much money in the coffers right now coming in. It's just too big to fail. It's too big. And on top of that, they can go in a different direction and be like a circus. They could be the big top. WWE is in town. It's not any particular star that's in town, but there are a number of stars you know of, that you're familiar with, that you're going to see. When we look at Raw and SmackDown every week, nobody really thinks about this, but this is the kind of thought process I'm starting to understand why they're doing what they're doing. The championship contenders matches, the consistent seeing the stars in the ring. Well, that's to cater to the house, to the fans in the crowd. That they're not going to see their stars in some backstage segment when they want to be able to see their stars wrestle in every arena. They're not doing, lots of house shows where they're going across, everywhere and just barreling through with tours. What they're doing is with their TV shows, they're treating them like house shows in a way that you're going to get to see the same matches more or less being done. But then for television, they're going to do a little bit of variation. Oh, this will be a tag team match, something variant of this. But then all these favorite stars of theirs are going to be on TV. Except for some. That you wait until the pay-per-views, like Roman Reigns. Doesn't have to wrestle every time. But if you want to see Drew McIntyre or Sheamus or, the women you want to see them wrestle, there's a lot of stars that will consistently wrestle on TV. They always have matches on TV. And the feuds continue to go on. And people get to watch them on TV. And they have their entrances, and you get to see the whole experience if you're watching it live. And as long as it doesn't completely destroy the rating that's being put right now on Raw or SmackDown, it doesn't hurt them. Because it's still more or less the number one show on cable. And they're still getting the demographics. And the advertisers are still right there, staying with them. Because you have to think about, maybe there'll be still some people that will watch the DVR on demand after the fact. You got that going for you. So there could be a lot of reasons as to why the consistency is always very flat and the same. So that's what they're going to do. As far as I know, the ratings have not started to go down anymore. Now they're actually kind of steady. Raw is still 1.8 million viewers, maybe 1.9 if they're lucky. And SmackDown's getting over 2 million viewers. They're in the start of the fall season. It's actually happening. What is NXT going to be? We're going to see a change in that next week. They do have quite a few big matches to kind of start things off for NXT next week, and they'll do that. So they're going to shore up their ratings to be at least at level. And then take the NXT model, rebuild with stars and creative and gimmicks the way they want it. The fans no longer get to dictate to them who the prototype of WWE star is. It's still going to be Vince's idea. Vince allowed some feedback. Now he's taking it back. And Nick Khan's probably right there saying, you know what? You're absolutely right, Vince. Let's go back to what worked in the 80s. Let's work with what worked in the 90s. Get the big guys over there. Get these younger stars. Because what will probably happen is we will start seeing younger stars that hopefully we'll see on the main roster. They will not be people that have been around for 10, 15 years in the indies being told you have to now generically change your style of wrestling to something else. Because that's what all these stars that got brought over from NXT, they had to be changed to something else. And some of those stars probably didn't want to change. You look at Adam Cole, you look at Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Kyle O'Reilly. What they're doing right now at NXT is what they're going to be able to do. What MSK will be able to do what they're doing right now on the main roster. They're going to probably have to water it down. And then some of the stars they have, do they even fit WWE style? Do they even fit the main roster style? What Vince would want to see in the ring? When you look at Walter or Imperium for that matter, or Grizzled Young Veterans, or Pete Dunne, or Ilya Dragunov. Do you think those guys fit the main roster? They're a liking of what William Regal or Triple H or other people want to see because they were going by what they thought would work. It was still a project that they were taking control of without Vince and Bruce being ultimately oversight. But now they are. Because things have changed, because the product is stale, because the product is not working at the developmental system, because it only pulls 700,000 viewers at the most, no matter what they book. It has a ceiling. It's not getting anything. It has to improve. It has to be doing more. It has to be able to be monetized more. Something more has to come from it. They have to get a return on their investment. It's no longer in Full Sail. It's in the Performance Center only. It's being produced there. No more students doing it. The way the NXT project was done completely changes now. But now it's going to be something done that's going to be done by the training team in the Performance Center, produced there. And you're now going to get what was basically Florida Championship Wrestling, but better produced. which I didn't mind. I actually really liked FCW. Not so much Deep South and not so much OVW, but the way the Florida Championship Wrestling was, I liked it. I watched it all the time. And I had to watch it on YouTube somewhere because it was only on Brightline Sports Networks in Tampa on basic cable. And I had to go looking for that because somebody put it up on YouTube, and I went looking for it and I found it. And I watched it. And it was great. And NXT at the beginning turned into that. So they're going to build the pipeline for young talent that eventually will replace some of the staleness of the stars they have right now. And for some credit, they have had some new stars they've been able to build up to a certain point that are marketable and can be used somehow. Like, does everybody like, Happy Corbin now? I actually like the gimmick a lot. I wish it was more like the name Lucky Corbin because based on this gimmick, because he's kind of the winner in this, that. But Happy Corbin works. Probably the best gimmick they made him. They're going to change Elias at some point. That's an NXT star that they brought in, and they had him do the guitar gimmick, the journeyman. Now he's going to be something else. Keith Lee's going to get a new gimmick. He's going to turn heel. Damian Priest has come into the space now, kind of kept his same gimmick that he had moving over, Archer of Infamy, more or less. And he's doing well. Riddle has more or less stayed the same thing he was in NXT. He's doing well. Nikki ASH, they retooled Nikki Cross altogether. She's marketable for the kids, regardless of what you think. Alexa Bliss, the same way, marketable to kids. Like the scary thing with the scary doll. So there's things out there that for the crowd, you're seeing that crowd is not the snarky mark WWE crowd that would be all full of signs and, chanting all the way through. You're not getting any of that now. You're getting a very family-oriented audience. And it's something for everybody. And that's what they're going to do. Now, I don't mind that too much. I don't think that's a big deal. Everybody's going to be caught up on that. But then what AEW is the alternative. But then the problem is there's an alternative. And that's what they don't like. Because what they want, the loyalists, the apologists, what they want is those stars. They wanted them to, everybody that's good to come into WWE, right? And be able to go and work their style and improve the product by their own work rate. Which that's impossible. And then you can get the fantasy book, the dream matches that you want because these stars should be on the big stage. Yeah. Well, they could be on a big stage somewhere else. But there's a real vitriol and a hatred to what anything Tony Khan does and to what AEW does altogether. Because there wasn't anybody in the journalistic sense that was writing stories relaying their disdain. It was hard to find today looking for it. But podcasters, I could find people that will be critical. And I could find people on Twitter critical of the product because of how they feel. And some have some pretty big voices. Now, I'm going to play you a clip. One of the shows that I actually did reach out to many years ago when I started this program to get a little promotion, and I even had, one of the hosts on the show, Anthony Missionary Thomas, Wrestling Soup, along with his co-host Joey Numbers, who, his comments, even on Twitter when he was still on there, but for whatever reason he's gone, is a lightning rod. You could take it as you want. I'm not here to criticize. Okay, but if you want someone that's speaking as a voice to those people that are super critical of what AEW is doing right now, somebody that's actually speaking for a lot of people, it's his opinion, but his opinion resonates with a lot of fans I saw on wrestling Twitter making their comments of what they thought of AEW All Out and all the debuts of Danielson, Cole, Punk. He went through it. And that's what I want to play for you right now. So it's mostly Joey Numbers and Anthony Missionary Thomas from Wrestling Soup this past Sunday, reviewing AEW All Out. Website's WrestlingSoup.com. You can look for where they find their podcast. Listen to the whole thing. I'd recommend you listen to it too. And take heed of the comments that were being made. And you let me know what you think.
I have high hopes as far as what Daniel Bryan will be able to do there. I think that they gotta pump the brakes on Punk. because, like I said, Punk clearly, I mean, you could see it on Punk's face, man. You could see it.
They just need to do something different with him. That's all. I don't think you pump the brakes on him. Change it up.
Yeah.
Don't have him be the guy to carry the company.
She should have been in tag matches for like 3 to 6 months.
Dude, when you brought that up, that was the first. I was like, yep.
And it's just this type of shit, though, man. It's not rocket science. Like that's one of the reasons why too I get so frustrated about some of the stuff, and I come off so shitty or condescending or angry because some of the stuff is just, to me, really fucking obvious and really clear. Like, oh, hey, we got this guy. He hasn't wrestled in damn near a decade. What do we do to get him back in the ring? Oh, well, you have him in some tag matches where he stands on the apron, he takes some tags, he gets in there, he gets some offense, and, we get him more comfortable. You don't say, hey, you know what you do? You send him out there with one of the best, most explosive, fastest, fucking high-flying wrestlers that we have right now and see what happens. Because what you're going to do is you're going to expose him. And you're going to make him look slow. You're going to make him look old. And you're going to make him look not ready. And you're going to make him look like he's not who he was before. And that's why I'm sure, like you said, you looking at it as somebody that's been watching this guy since probably the year 2000, you see it. And instead of, you feel the excitement, but then you also feel the sadness of going.
It's not for me to take away what was being said by the Wrestling Soup folks. It's not for me to say. All I'm going to say about it is that a lot of the opinions made are completely opposite of most of the journalists that I saw writing about this show and reviewing it. And it is different than my opinion on the show. But they're entitled to that opinion. And that's okay. But I pointed this clip out, not to go and, call them out or anything like that. It's not anything like that. I have respect for the show. They're much bigger than I am. By far. And I'm not using it for clickbait or anything like that. No. I'm just making it a point to show my point of this program, the subject I wanted to talk about, where there is what people could say is envy of AEW. Whether it's believable or not. And I'm not calling Wrestling WWE apologists. I'm just saying that they are pretty critical. They're maybe in some cases hypercritical of what they might say of anything WWE or AEW or any other organization. The same thing I could say with the folks that was originally Live Audio Wrestling or now Sunday Night's Main Event. How every time they do an Impact Wrestling pay-per-view, because Jason Agnew and Dan the Mouth Levesque used to work for Fight Network, and they're not very happy about them and the way that Impact Wrestling and Anthem Entertainment kind of like tossed them to the side, right? Their relationship they have with Fight Network, there's a lot of animosity with Impact Wrestling as a result. And I don't think that John Pollock and Wade Ting over Post Wrestling really had that so much either. But for the most part, I listened to a lot of different reviews from Bustin' Open, the Post Wrestling, to Wrestling Soup, to Don Tony. And, there's the fan podcasters, there's the journalists, there's the wrestling opinion, because also there was some critical talk by Disco Inferno on the K100, the Keeping It 100 podcast. Yeah. So everybody's got their own thing about it. But it has caused kind of a tribal feel to this, where everybody is kind of being split apart. There is a tearing apart of the IWC right now over what AEW is doing right now. It's polarizing. There's no doubt about it. But the ruling is still out to see if the ratings will resonate and if the direction changes for AEW. Because even tonight's program, they did announce some matches, not necessarily announcing a whole lot of marquee matches for Dynamite or for Rampage for the matter, because they're now relying on all the debuts that they got. They had quite a bit of talking this show, which is a little bit not the norm on what they normally do, because CM Punk had a talking segment. Adam Cole with Bryan Danielson also had a talking segment. MJF had a long talking segment. You had a lot of promos. You were a promo-heavy show tonight. Not indicative of normally what Dynamite is, but it's different. And will that, it's kind of experimental because it's kind of going against the grain as opposed to having all the normal matches. You just have match after match after match. You did have quite a few matches. They mixed it up tonight. So there was a balance tonight. If you wanted promos tonight from all these stars, you got them. Then they're going to have to get embedded into matches. They're going to have to get embedded into feuds. They're going to be in ring, and that's what's going to happen next. But then there's a thought about how they're going to work out when they're not under the WWE system, or if they've not been around for a long time. So, like, say, if a Paul White or a CM Punk that have not been, wrestling that long or haven't been wrestling at all for a while, that kind of thing. Now, even I said CM Punk with his match with Darby Allin, he changed his game up. And I saw people saying, well, they were expecting him to go and do Pepsi Plunge and, be a lot more active around the ring and change his, go back to the original look. People expected the 2005 Ring of Honor CM Punk or the 2011 CM Punk. I don't know where they're going to come from with that. This guy is 40-something years old. I felt like he was going to change. He's changed his promos the way he is. He's dictating what he wants to do. This is not WWE where Vince McMahon, to the credit of Vince McMahon, probably would be doing a little bit different of what he would do to book CM Punk in which matches he wants. I'm sure people are going to be critical of why did the Team Taz deal come out first for CM Punk? Why that? And he was trying to name other names that he should go ahead and go after. Well, the point is the fantasy booking can be done, and that quick booking, let's go ahead and feed the instant gratification of the IWC. AEW doesn't need to do that. You got time for all this. Let me tell you one story. Tonight, the one segment that really caught on to me for AEW Dynamite, and I called it out on Twitter, and this is because I do like MLW. I have an affinity for those guys. I like Major League Wrestling. I like what they do over there. Even though I used to always give shit about Court Bauer, always saying, we'll see, let's see, because he would never give out anything about what he's doing. Never disclose. But then Rhett Giddens, who was on the program, one of the few interviews I ever did on this program, made the point that's how he's always going to be. He's always going to hold this close to the vest what he's going to say, whatever announcements there are. Fine. But I did enjoy the storyline in MLW 2 years back where MJF was part of the Dynasty with Alexander Hammerstone and Richard Holiday. And seeing the New Heart Foundation of Davey Boy Smith Jr., Brian Pillman, and Teddy Hart. I enjoyed that. Actually, I did love that whole dynamic, what they were doing there. And ever since, now we got Aztec Underground and Contra and all that kind of stuff going on. Different change. But I really did enjoy, that was two of the people that I really enjoyed from MLW that made their way over to AEW with Brian Pillman Jr. and MJF. And MJF, he lit a fire of a promo tonight. The one thing I can say about AEW is there are a number of stars I really, really, really like. I can say the same thing in the WWE, but right now there are some stars that I love to see on my TV. MJF is one of them. He is such a piece of shit as a heel. Like, you do want to hate that guy. You want to punch him in the face. He's doing his damn job. He is excellent for his age. Excellent for any wrestler out there. That guy is just shining right now. Thunder Rosa, also one of my favorites. And it it did piss me off. But don't get me wrong. Ruby Soho is good with what they're doing with her to get her set up for Britt Baker down the line for a AEW Women's World Title shot. So there's that. And there's other stars I do like that they have over there that do stand out. I like Dwayne Martin. I'm really enjoying his work right now. And I like what they're doing with Miro. I like what they're doing with some of the stars anyway. I like what they're doing with Malachi Black. Now, this match with Dustin Rhodes, that was botchy to start tonight. That wasn't good. That's some of the stuff they do need to tighten up. There is some tweaking, some tightening up of what they're doing. Because some of the wrestling can get a little bit loose. And there needs to be a little bit of policing on that. Same thing for the referees. That also has to get policed. But Bully Ray says it all the time on Busted Open. The crowd is eating it up. So, it's working. And yes, the AEW fan base, to that point, they are apologists to a point as well. Because they're going to defend AEW to the hilt, because they're going to die on that hill, because they want AEW to succeed to the detriment of WWE. Meanwhile, I don't feel that way. I want AEW to succeed to help lift the other, because now it's actually changed. Now we know clearly that WWE is going to stay in his own lane. They're going to put blinders on. Nick Khan said it. Vince McMahon more or less has said it. They're going to go their own way. They're going to go Fleetwood Mac. They're going to go their own way. That's it. AEW, Impact Wrestling, NWA, the new wrestling alliance, is going to cater to the mainstream. They're going to try to do the best to collectively take care of wrestling, while WWE is doing sports entertainment, which is still an offshoot of professional wrestling. So they're going to both do their own thing. For me, I want this new wrestling alliance to help out, because it's not, listen, AEW is getting all the attention. They're not completely perfect. They do a lot of things that make that show fun to watch. And I enjoy watching that show every week. That's all there is to it to that. Give me Dynamite over Monday Night Raw every week. Every week. And I'll tell you, listen, it's kind of tough to go and watch Rampage. I don't catch that show because I'm usually in the movies. I'm at a movie theater watching a brand new movie at 10 o'clock on Friday nights, and I don't remember to go ahead and watch that show back. Even though it's a good show, and I probably would enjoy 42 minutes of watching it, but I always miss it. And I don't remember the DVR either. I don't really like the DVR. I don't do much of that anyway. I just have, I'll go ahead and find it and I'll watch it. But I mean, everything else, there's other things I got to watch. Like, it is tough to go and add an extra hour. Like, I'm already starting to watch Dark and Dark Elevation and catching those because it's easy to watch on YouTube. But to go and watch another hour on Friday nights after SmackDown? No, after SmackDown, I'm done. But I'm going to have to try to remember to watch Rampage after the fact because it is a good show. I want to keep watching it. But I'm not staying home 10 o'clock at night myself to watch it. I wish they would move it to a different time, something. I know it's not going to be catered to me, but that's okay. I prefer they run it on the weekends or something like that, but I don't know. We'll figure out what they're going to do. We'll see how it stays there. And if it does well, and then it's something I just continue to hold on to, and I do make a point to watch it, because I have made a point to watch everything else. I won't be watching Impact Wrestling this week. I'll have to watch it on replay because I'll be watching the Buccaneers tomorrow doing Thursday Night Football and the NFL season opener. But either which way, the show's fun to watch. The pay-per-view was great. I really enjoyed it. Hard to get an A grade out of me. But remember, I'm the same guy that also really likes the Impact Wrestling pay-per-views. I enjoy the... Hey, did I praise NWA? Yes. Did I praise Impact Wrestling? Yes. I like everybody else that is not WWE because they're doing something different. Meanwhile, there are certain things where WWE can be doing well. They do have a lot of things they do good that I do like. I mean, I do like the champions they have right now across the board. Bobby Lashley, I think, is great. Him with MVP has been a great fit. But they do struggle with finding the right stars to work with and who they're going to work with and what they're going to be doing. I mean, do they need to have Randy Orton now trying to go after double champion and the whole idea? Hey, it's good filler, but it doesn't really mean much of anything. Roman Reigns, can't do any wrong. Great. Brock Lesnar, great. Becky Lynch, hey, people are not happy with how they did with Bianca Belair. I know I got crap for my comments about Bianca Belair and the fact that she lost the title so soon. Funny part is somebody actually said that I was being racist about it. I'm like, what? Don't use that line on me, please. I'm not anything near like that. I'm surprised I ever get that. Being a minority, I get that line. But anyways, people like to throw those. It's like a derogatory slur. It just gets thrown out there. But then the comment was up on YouTube and it went away. Somebody deleted it. Just like, oh, I'm not going to say it anymore. But I would like certain stars to get booked differently. It's going to be hard to make Becky Lynch a heel. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they want to try. Hey, good luck with that. See what happens. I don't know how it's going to work out or if you're going to make it happen, but either which way. So everybody's going to have their opinion and their thought process of how they feel about what's going on. Well, let's go through quickly some of the people that are talking about how everything has changed. So let's go through some of the things that have been said. Okay, so I'll give it to you like this. Brian Alvarez wrote a story that got up on SportsIllustrated.com. Buoyed by new stars' debuts, All Out may have turned the tide in AEW's battle with WWE. Okay. So Brian Alvarez writes that All Out was memorable for a number of reasons, including what many fans call the greatest cage match in wrestling history. Lucha Brothers beating the Young Bucks for the AEW tag team titles. He tells all the matches. The big surprises were Soho, Cole, and Danielson. Similar to Punk, hints have been dropped about all three, including one when Punk, unplanned and without approval, although Tony Khan at a press conference said he didn't care, told the fans they'd have to wait a little longer when they chanted for Danielson during one of his interview segments. But none of them were announced in advance. All three spoke to the press later in the evening, told different stories about why they made the jump from WWE to AEW. Soho, who had been fired, talked about how this night was the greatest moment of her life. She felt welcome like she never felt before in her career. She had a high she wanted to never end. It was the first time in her life the fans ever chanted her name. Cole explained that he loved NXT. He loved the people he worked with. He agreed to do a short-term extension of his contract afterward. In the end, he said he always knew he was almost certainly leaving for AEW. So Cole's options said he was basically to go to AEW to roll the dice, or roll the dice on a main roster that almost never gave opportunities to wrestlers his size. He chose the former and was glowing with happiness at the creative possibilities he saw in his future. Danielson explained that he not only did he love WWE and Vince McMahon, he had a very difficult time deciding where to go, stay or go. He knew that everyone was there like family to him. Brie Bella, his father-in-law, John Laurinaitis. But in the end, he chose AEW for a number of reasons. Creative freedom, the ability to work in other companies like New Japan, and the fact that at his core, he was a professional wrestler. He wanted to get in the ring and wrestle with everyone in AEW. And then also the point that was being said also about Brody Lee and how he was memorialized and the tribute that was given to him and how AEW handled it as a family. Quite a few of the stars here, like a Punk or Danielson, really did relish in that, which was very important to them. So that's what was said by Brian Alvarez when he put that story out there. Then you had some other comments. So Mick Foley made comments about it that have come out recently, and that really got some people going. He did a video about it, saying that WWE has a problem that is no longer the place for talent to aspire to. That's his words. Now, Foley praised AEW with the promotion, signing a lot of the stars. He says some of the problems lay squarely at WWE's door, expressing some uncertainty as to whether he would have enjoyed the same kind of a success he did during the Attitude Era if he was a younger wrestler rising up the ranks today. Now, the story I'm taking from is Joseph Zucker at Bleacher Report, who puts a bit of context behind this and saying, in a post-WCW landscape, the company has enjoyed a wide gap on the rest of the competition, reporting a $265.6 million revenue for its second quarter 2021. And as a result, the WWE didn't have a clear incentive to drastically change its approach. It could still be the premier landing spot for the industry's biggest names, which it is. But I always said with the wrestlers, you want to go somewhere to go ahead and plow your trade or still make money somewhere else. The end all be all is no longer WWE. It can now be AEW, New Japan, Impact, NWA, AAA, whatever. There's other options. And that's the one thing that AEW does have that is a great advantage. The opportunity to work at other organizations. So if Adam Cole wants to go work somewhere else, and here's the other thing too. Let me just say this too. Ring of Honor. What are you doing? You know, when you have all these stars A handful of them, by the way, 3 of the debuts all came from Ring of Honor. You're telling me you guys don't want to get yourself on a super card. Get Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, CM Punk back to come back and wrestle with you guys under the AEW banner. You're telling me you're not interested in that? To get them to come back in and work with the likes of Jay Lethal or the Briscoes or what have you? Or Jonathan Gresham? You don't think it's a good idea? Why is Ring of Honor so lost on this? I still don't understand that part. But, you know, it is something that bothers me. I don't understand why they don't want to be a part of this. Why they want to also go their own route and not work with anybody else. I mean, MLW wants to work with other people. They just probably not be as big as a company that can be worked with. NWA is happy to go work along with AEW and Impact. The relationship's good. New Japan, no problem. And that's something to be said, where the respect of their craft is going to be by the fans of all these other promotions, not just AEW. Because AEW is the answer. It is the alternative to WWE, where none of those AEW fans, if they don't still watch WWE today, they did. So they're going to be attached to the way the booking and the way the things were in the Attitude Era and the kind of instant gratification that we're getting then. But not now. For the purists, the real wrestling fans, to see that Adam Cole or Bryan Danielson or Jon Moxley, CM Punk, who knows, if they want to go work in Japan, they could. If they want to work in Mexico like Kenny Omega, they could. Or Andrade could. Or whatever. That's great. And seeing them work with other stars. Like, there's not much to be said about the fact that, listen, Kenny Omega, I enjoyed and relished the fact he got to work with a lot of stars over in Impact Wrestling. I liked to work with Rich Swann or Sami Callihan or Moose. I loved all that. I thought it was great. Now Christian Cage gets to do that. Because there is going to be an elevation for some of these stars to do that. Okay? That's what it comes down to. And maybe Andrade might not be the biggest thing at this moment. And also, for AEW right now, with all this talent they have, it's going to be tough to go and keep a good spotlight on all these stars. Because there's so many of those, plus juggle the talent they have underneath that are all the young talent they brought on the originals of AEW to make sure they're not lost in the shuffle. So, I mean, I don't envy the task that Tony Khan and his team have of what they're going to have to do. They're at a high point. I don't expect them to go ahead and just stay at this level and continue the surprise. No. Kevin Owens, he might be out of contract in January. He's going to go. Bray Wyatt, he's going to come. I don't need this to be an opening door. We don't need Tony Khan to be the invisible door to all these for every WWE guy to come right in and go. Look, I mean, they don't all have to go to AEW right away. They don't all have to be in AEW because now anybody wants to go to AEW that might have come from the main roster of WWE. It's going to be overfilled right now. It's a saturated roster right now. You really don't have much more room. So there is going to be some time where some stars that made it over to AEW, they might switch back over. And I don't think it's going to be because AEW is going to make any mistakes. I don't think they're going to do anything that's WCW bad. I don't think they're going to make that mistake. But let's just be honest. Some stars, they will go to AEW and they might feel like, well, they're underused. They're going to be less in the shuffle. They'll take their contract. They'll go back to WWE. Or some of the younger stars that have made their name in AEW or some other places, they might decide to go and make the switch over if WWE is going to take them. You never know. But it's still so soon in the process right now. Now, I mentioned WCW, so of course I'm going to bring up Eric Bischoff because even he has made some comments about this as well. Let's go ahead and bring that up real quick because I think that, it's just certain people. I know Vince Russo said some stuff as well. I didn't get a chance to really read what he said, but every once in a while I like to follow what he's doing with what they're doing with the company. And I know he's been also critical of AEW as well. No surprise there. Well, there's not much about him except he said he was working on a project for WWE, I guess. That's it. But let's go to Eric Bischoff and some comments that he made. So he was on his 83 Weeks podcast. He mentioned some of the buzz being done by some of the celebrities and some of the, how the press is kind of handling AEW and how they're actually getting some mainstream notoriety. He says, quote, "There's a tremendous amount of chatter about AEW and social media, and I've seen more and more mainstream media attention, more and more celebrities hanging out, not being in the ring. When you've got notable people and celebrities across different platforms and sports, media, celebrities getting involved in your product and enjoying it, that bodes well." Now, when he talks about the wrestling war that WCW had in the 90s, if AEW could do something like that, he's saying there's a long way that's going to have to go before that happens. Quote, "Let's be realistic. I know the emotions are running very high when it comes to AEW in a good way, and I'm happy to see that. But realistically, if you compare viewership here in the United States, we're not going to talk about international because AEW is not in the same universe as WWE when it comes to their international footprint." Absolutely correct. When you look at domestic, AEW delivers about 50% of Monday Night Raw on average. AEW's highest rated show compared to the highest rated show of SmackDown delivers about 50% of the audience. So it's not like they're going to take market share. As much as everybody wants it to be the Monday Night Wars, it's not. And it won't be unless and until AEW goes head to head. Now that's a real war. Now we're talking about market share. And that's a few of the stories I want to bring up now before we're going to wrap things up. There were some changes with Raw again. The report of the same issues where they have changes being made prior to the show coming on. Let's go to that. PW Insider reported the matches originally planned for a tag team turmoil was going to be the main event of the show, as those matches would get a lot of TV time. But the officials decided to go in a different direction, kicking off the show, and carried the main event with minor changes made. So yeah, sandwiched the tag team turmoil at the beginning, at the end of the night. That's what they decided to do. I get it, and I guess if that worked okay. I mean, obviously the changes they decided to make was fine if they felt like it. Okay. A couple other headlines are going to be brought up. Bronson Reed is going to be a free agent as of tomorrow, and a number of other stars that were released on NXT on August 6th will also be coming up with their 30-day non-competes completed. So keep an eye on who they have. If there's anybody of those names that are going to be making their way over. And who knows where Bronson Reed goes? I mean, there should be some place for him to go somewhere that will change things up. Now, one story I did not get to talk about last week that it did come up after I finished recording my show. It happened on Wednesday night, but I did not notice what was going on until I watched Twitter after I recorded my show. And at that point, I couldn't say anything about. I wasn't going to report on about it because I didn't know what was going on. Well, I saw what was going on, and everybody knows I'm talking about Daffney or Shannon Spruill, and basically broadcasting her own demise on Instagram Live. And this story did rock a lot of people. There was a lot of comments and a lot of praise and a lot of good words said about Shannon on the program, or at least across the wrestling Twitter and across the wrestling universe. So new information on this that I'm going to bring up now, and I'll finally go and talk about this. TMZ reported that police confirmed to them that former WCW TNA star Daffney passed away from an apparent gunshot wound to the chest. Her real name is Shannon Spruill. Posted a disturbing video on Instagram Live on Wednesday night that many fans and friends had her concerned. In the video, she could be seen holding a pistol in her hand, and before the feed cut off, she said she wanted her brain sent to Boston, the site of the headquarters for the Concussion Legacy Institute. Daffney had spoken about the concussions she suffered while in TNA and after her run with them, after she filed a lawsuit claiming that they were not helping to cover her medical bills after they promised to do so. Police went to Daffney's home in Norcross, Georgia on Thursday for a welfare check. They were met by Daffney's mom, Jean. Police knocked on the door, but there was no answer, and they left without entering the apartment. A few hours later, they came back and saw Daffney's car parked near the apartment. They were given a key by a maintenance man, but the key did not unlock the deadbolt, so the fire department was called in to break down the door. They found her body on the bed with a gunshot wound to the chest and the gun nearby. She got her start on the national stage at WCW playing the role of David Flair's girlfriend and the manager Crowbar. Run was considered to be one of the bright spots in the 99-2000s portion of WCW. And she was fun. The Scream Queen. Quite interesting. And I really did like that character. She also played the role of Sarah Palin as the Sarah Palin parody The Governor on TNA in 2008 before settling back into her familiar role. She suffered multiple concussions and sued the company for putting her in an unsafe working environment in TNA. I still remember the match with her and Rosie Lotta-Love and the damn shopping cart that she fell onto and just got destroyed. And really got hurt. Just saddening. So, I mean, I'll tell you. Wrestling world reacted to the passing. There's a lot of people that put comments out there. Cedric Alexander, Daffney was a part of my career from my early days with the High Spots family. She never hesitated to show me kindness, rather be a place to crash while on the road or just fun conversation at the gimmick table. Cora Jade, sometimes I love watching as a kid in her TNA days. Thoughts and prayers for the loved ones. Kane, so very sad. Pray for Daphne's loved ones. Tegan Knox. Ricky Morton. Gail Kim. Heartbreaking to know that she felt so alone in that dark space. Man. It was all sad. Brian Heff from the Blue Meanie. I wish I didn't have to say this. Rest in peace. You were a sweet soul. You were loved. You were missed. This is a rough one. And I don't know. It's all a shame to see what happened to her. And I thought it would be something I at least made a point to go and talk about that happening, even though I'm very late to the game on it. And I didn't bring it up also during AEW All Out because I figured I would wait until everything was said about it and the report was actually made. So there you go. Yeah, it was sad to see that. And I just, there's just certain things that happen like that. That is just trash is the best way I could put it. Other thing that happened today, should make a point as well that Triple H, or Paul Levesque, actually underwent open heart surgery today. He suffered a cardiac event last week. A genetic heart issue was described. And that he underwent a successful procedure last week at Yale New Haven Hospital. Paul's expected to make a full recovery. Glad to see him recover. Glad to see he'll be making a full recovery. Good to hear. So there's that we're going to talk about as well. So as we're going to close things out, I really appreciate all of you checking out the show and listening to it as you always do. And if you didn't get a chance to listen to my comments on AEW All Out, I did do a post show. Look for it right here, WrestlingIsReal.com. You can find out for yourself. You can hear what I said all about it. And take that there. Down the line, later this month is Extreme Rules. Next month, Bound for Glory. In November, AEW Full Gear. And that's where we are with things. So things kind of slow down at this point, which is all good and fine. And getting back to the original point that I had when it comes to AEW, I mean, it does kind of suck. Everybody has their own comments about this and how they're all kind of really kind of bent. There's just some fans getting bent out of shape. And I would hope that people on Twitter and everybody else on social media would have respect for, your fellow wrestling fans out there. I doubt anybody's going to do that because everybody's going to have their own opinion. A lot of keyboard warriors out there. And just know if you're listening to this program, I'm not here to put allegiance to anybody. I hopefully just try to call it as I see it, and I hope you appreciate that. So we're coming back next week with another Wrestling Is Real podcast. Thanks for being here, and come back for another Wrestling Is Real podcast because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.